Retro Rebel Gamecast is brought to you by templeofgeek.com, your one-stop shop for all things geek. You can find all of our episodes and fulfill your sci-fi, fantasy, and geek culture-related needs at templeofgeek.com. Welcome to the Retro Rebel Gamecast, where we discuss gaming and related topics. Retro Rebel is released Fridays, and you can find this episode and much more by heading to templeofgeek.com or wherever you download your favorite podcasts. You can even find us on Facebook and Instagram at Retro Rebel Podcast for exclusive content and to see what else we're up to. My name is Stacy, and as always, is my Rebel co-host, Rebel, Amanda. Co-Rebel. What's up, co-Rebel?
How's it going? We've done it.
Good. Yay! Well, you know, there's always something, but man, this is I think this is better. We're stepping forward. Only took 4 or 5 years, right?
I know, to finally have all the component pieces. I've always had a mic and camera, but recently I haven't had a computer that's capable of doing all the things at once. So now finally everything works.
We have all the pieces. That's right.
Great.
All the pieces. Fantastic. So, well, tell us about what's been going on. What have you been playing?
Oh, I've been playing, and I've nearly finished Nexomon Extinction. So
no idea what that is.
It's great. This is a game that you would love. First off, it's a Pokemon ripoff, almost word for word.
Okay, yeah. I think I've heard of it. Okay.
But obviously, because Pokemon is locked to Nintendo, if you don't have a Nintendo device, you've never been able to play Pokemon except Pokemon Go, which, as I'm sure you know, I played a lot last year, and I thought, oh, I want Pokemon, and I want it on my actual PC, on my console. How do I make this happen? And so I looked up different options. Nexomon Extinction, it's there. It plays exactly like original Pokemon on like the Game Boy. And oh man, is it fun. Yeah, it's so effortless. You know, you get really good at the controls, and you're just like boom, 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 capturing, killing, whatever, leveling your guys up, putting the little things so they can share the XP, and then you can kind of figure out who you want where. I've got a completely ultra rare team now. I just got the last ultra rare guy yesterday. So the next step from that is legendary, of course, and I haven't been able to catch any legendaries yet because I think I'm still too low. My highest guy is 47, and I think once you get, because the max level on the standard game is 70, so I'm pretty close to max level. It doesn't take that long. I can do 10 levels in I don't know, 2 or 3 hour period if I grind and put my mind to it. But you've got trainer battles, you've got searching for Pokemon in the wild. There's a pretty decent story actually, and this game is very self-aware, and I think that's the part that I think you would really like, is that while you're playing it, there are parts and they're just like, did the developers even try on this bit? Like 100% fourth wall breaking, like all the tropes. And they're like, oh, I guess you can have this because we definitely didn't duplicate this NPC from earlier. You know, like all that sort of fourth wall breaking stuff is in there, and it's really fun. I think it was like $16 on Xbox. For the amount of fun I'm having, and this is the first game I've actually paid and bought in a while, but I was like, I've never been able to play a Pokemon game ever. And why am I depriving myself of this? You know, I should be able to play Pokemon. So Nexomon Extinction.
So get a Nintendo.
Yeah, well, you know what? If it was $16, I would have gotten one, but they're still about 160 quid over here. I did look at it and I was like, are you joking to play one game? Are you insane? So
yeah. Fair enough. Well, $16 is in my price range because I mean I did spend $80 on Elden Ring. So, and I bet you I'd play that more than I played Elden Ring.
Oh, you would play the shit out of this game. I'm telling you, it's easy. There's like the difficulty settings. If it gets too hard, you just grind a little bit more, and not even like load.
That I like.
Yeah,
see, that I can do, and that is a. Maybe we'll talk about that in our theme, or in our topic for today. But I don't mind that, so that's okay. Especially if it's fun. That's part of it. So. Speaking of Elden Ring, I have not been playing it, but I do want to get back into it. I've watched a lot of videos on it, but what I have been playing, and I got back into it, and I had forgotten how good a game it is Guardians of the Galaxy. I haven't finished it yet, and so I was like, let me jump back into it. And I was so surprised at how fast I remembered the controls. It's very intuitive, and so I jumped right back into it. I was pretty sure I was tracking the story, and so I jumped right back into the story as well. And it is a really good story. In fact, I'd say, and I know I said this or something to the effect the first time I talked about this game, it is on par with the movies. It may not be, it's definitely not better than the movies, but if you enjoyed Guardians of the Galaxy, the movies, and you can get past the fact that none of the characters look exactly like they do or sound exactly like they do, the essence is there. Like who Peter Quill is in there, and it's like, and it's very funny. In fact, I like Gamora more in this than I did in because she's, I think she's probably a little bit more realistic as to who she would be, all things considered, and her history in the movies. But in the games, she's much more I don't know, she's just got, it seems like she's a lot more Earth influenced. And so the way she talks and things that she says are not as alien as they are sort of on the movies. But anyway, it's a great game. I am thoroughly enjoying it. I'm about to the end, I believe, because they've just revealed a few things, and I think I'm right near the end, but should finish that soon. Great game. I highly recommend it. I did buy it as well, because I was afraid I wouldn't finish it in time on it, but it's on Game Pass now. So
yeah, I did see it on Game Pass. Actually, I wanted to download it, so that's a great. Yeah. I'm gonna do that right now while I'm thinking about it.
Isn't that amazing with your phone?
Even. I know. It's magical. Great. Everything's connected. Oh, and I have a computer that's powerful enough to actually take advantage of the Game Pass cloud on PC. What?
That's even better. This day just gets better. So, well, that's what I've been playing. That's what you've been playing. That brings us to the news. You have any news? I do have a couple things, actually. So
I do. I have 2 news, but you go first because now I'm downloading this game. So
oh yeah, she's busy. So first thing I wanted to that I saw, and I literally saw this as I was prepping my notes for this this episode, is a company or a program called Quell Fitness Gaming, Quell. So if you haven't seen this, we've talked a lot about the overlap between reality and gaming, and how AR is kind of the near future, and that eventually we may have haptic suits and all of this other stuff. Well, Quell takes what the Kinect did, and obviously this is a very niche area of gaming, is the Kinect style PlayStation Move, Wii style gaming, where you have your hand controllers that are monitoring movement, but you also have a camera that's checking your movement as well. But what they've added is a belt that I think it tracks heart rate, but also these elastic bands that attach to the grips. So when I go to reach, there's resistance against it, and there's a little bit of feedback. So it's definitely not the same as if I were to reach and make contact with something.
Right.
But it does add a little bit of resistance. So it's not like you're punching in space, or it's just some group fitness class. You do have something that's that's kind of fighting against you. So you're not necessarily, just punching in the air. You can do everything sort of, it's a little bit like what you did. I believe it was maybe Fable Legends or whatever the Fable game was that was strictly Kinect. I can't remember the name of that game, where you could cast spells, you could do things, but it was all based on the Kinect, right? Your hand movement. It's a lot like that. So you can cast spells, you can punch, you can fight, you can bob and weave and things like that. It's meant for fitness. But I thought that it seemed like they had honed that technology considerably better than they had originally with the Kinect. And the reviews seem to be pretty positive. But I thought that was neat. It was a good, although it's niche, I thought it was a good use of that technology. The other news that I have is there is a social network specifically for gamers that is being developed. And right now, IGN is I guess it's sponsored content that IGN was hosting. And so as I was scrolling through and just trying to pick up some news and see what's going on in the gaming landscape, I picked this up. And so it's called PvP. That's the name of the social network. I thought that's pretty At least it's on the nose, but I didn't think it was too much. It is created or founded by two guys, Phil Stover and Chris Gray. Chris Gray, I believe, was the CEO of Crave Games, and they have put out a lot of, I think, some mobile games, but so that could be a red flag. but nonetheless, decades of experience in this. I'm just interested to see the direction it goes, because if anybody's ever followed the comment section of anything, any social network, there's going to be vitriol and just negativity. Gamers have not been known to have the best behavior when it comes to stuff like this either. So I don't know. They just got a bad reputation, possibly. But I thought it was interesting. It's to have a social network specific to gamers, about gamers, posting game content, and so as long as it's accessible and free, for individuals who want that sort of entertainment and that sort of social network, I think that's cool. Right now, they're still looking for investors. So for me, that I'm if I were on the Shark Tank, I would be out, because I don't have the capital to help. But besides that very important part, I just kind of want to wait and see. But PvP, social network for gamers, by gamers, actually, coming soon. It's still in beta, but I think that they're really close to going public.
Right. Okay. I mean, as a woman who's been in the gaming community a long time, I would say, generally speaking, there's a fair amount of netbirds in that community. So am I super excited about a community for gamers? Maybe not, considering what Xbox Live and all the other multiplayer services always turn into. But maybe this will be different. I think it's tough when it's a non-curated environment. So, I feel like people are fairly competitive. If there's not competition, what will they be talking about? It remains to be seen. I'll wait and see what the adoption is like before I get excited about it.
Right. Well, and think about it. Who are the investors, and who is the target audience? The majority of gamers, are they in our demographic? Or are they not? Are they individuals who have access to social media, or are they looking for people like us who have the capital in our age group but aren't necessarily the ones who are living and breathing and playing games 6, 8, 10 hours a day? I don't know.
Right.
Well, I know that's not the case, but anyway, be interesting. Like you said, remains to be seen.
Well, for things that people are definitely excited about, Elden Ring sold 12 million copies its opening week. And that's great. And people have a lot of great things to say about the game, and I'm excited for them. I think it's excellent. But I do have to say, their workers were definitely abused in the process, as I feel is what always happens with these game companies. The workers are never not getting abused. And so I think while the working conditions in general in the gaming industry continue to be quite poor, it's really hard for me to get excited about the companies profiting on the backs of their workforce. So that, I guess, is sort of a tough pill to swallow. I'm excited that a smaller studio is doing well. I think we need more smaller studios. And I say that, so, I mean, they're not an indie studio, but they are a smaller AAA publisher, and they've done some good things in the past. But I think generally the industry needs to look at its working practices, because it's a problem, full stop. And it's funny that we say smaller studio. So the developer of Rhyme, Tequila Works, they just got bought out by the huge studio Tencent. So they now have a majority shareholding in that smaller studio. So I'm not sure what the answer is, because huge companies have the same problems that small companies seem to have, and darlings like CD Projekt Red and all sorts, they have just as bad practices as the huge Ubisofts and the Activision Blizzards and stuff. So I think maybe it's just endemic in the industry. Maybe it's something that needs a class action in order for the general publishing environment to change. But those are my two pieces of news.
And yeah, I mean, I do think this is a topic to revisit. I think it's probably more complicated than we know, and may go as deep as all all businesses, especially anything where productivity is cataloged, and even sometimes your productivity is your compensation is based off your productivity. And so, which oftentimes is not the case in some of these gaming companies. You may be very productive. You may be a large or a huge contributor to the crunch timeline as a worker, but not be compensated at the end when, the game ends up being successful. You're not really tied to those profits. A lot of times you just did the work, and the top brass end up being the ones that reap the benefits. So, but I do think that it's worth revisiting. That's unfortunate. I had not heard that, but I mean, it doesn't surprise me that that's the case with From Software. The narrative as of right now has been very focused on the creator, the world, the positive nature of again our topic today, and some of the characteristics and mechanics of this particular game that were said to be non-viable, not profitable, and then you have one of the most profitable games ever to be sold within, I think, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, that's unfortunate, but Elden Ring is getting high praise, one of the most highly rated games of all time as well. So
yeah,
I think it's like 97 on Metacritic, which is just unheard of. So that brings us to our main topic for today, which, Amanda, if you would just kind of explain what we're going to discuss today.
So today we're going to be talking about what modern games like Elden Ring could learn from old games, like the original Pokemon on Game Boy. So it's just an exploration true to the title of our podcast. Retro games, they do have a very rich history, and they've spawned things like Metroidvania and platformer and other terms that we use to describe games that come out nowadays in entire genres of games. But the golden era of gaming, I would say, was sort of the pre live service model.
Absolutely.
So, I think today, and, obviously this suggestion came from my partner who said, like, what are modern games doing that seems so wrong? Like, why do most modern games tend to not get finished? Like, you and I are both capable of finishing games. Why aren't we? Like, I've almost finished this Pokemon game, and it'll be the first game I've finished since Cyberpunk 2077. So what does that mean?
Why?
Yeah. Right. So I thought we'd explore what things that current gen games should learn from the past to keep gaming more fun and to keep the gaming public with large disposable incomes interested in their products.
Right. And I think that's when I was thinking about this topic and notes to put down for it, I thought, what is it about the games, like you asked, what is it about current generation games that gets me to finish them, like that keeps me hooked? And I kept coming back to certain games, really, that I think there's enough in the Venn diagram, there's enough overlap between those games and the characteristics, mechanics in those games and games of the past, where they just basically took those elements and they've fleshed them out and elaborated it and used, I think, the technology in the best way possible to enhance the experience. And so I was going to list a few examples, and then we of just games, not necessarily like current gen games, and then we could talk about some of some of the things that we could bring back, or maybe some of the things that these games are doing well that help explain why games like Anthem are just vapid and you won't finish. I mean, vapid is the word, and a lot of these games are empty.
Yeah.
They're just worlds and they're just pretty with no substance.
No, go
So
ahead. Well, dive right in. Tell me what you're thinking.
Witcher 3,
Mm.
GTA 5, Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2, Arkham City. These are giant AAA games that outside of Red Dead and GTA, although I put a lot of time in those games, I never finished, but probably would have. I got sidetracked. There was too much to do in those two games. But that didn't keep me from wanting to go back into the world. It was such an interesting place, and there were details that were completely unnecessary. Unlike Ubisoft, who might have this really beautiful world with a lot to do, but who cares, right?
Yeah.
The Red Dead actually had a purpose behind everything, and there were layers to it, and ultimately you might trace a trail of breadcrumbs has nothing to do with even the side mission that you were on, that will take you to some haunted house and a story that if you do the research, there's actually a background there. So just such the depth that some of these games have. I think it is just built on stuff that retro games did really well, which the first one I was going to mention is just a narrative driven focus. So a lot of games, it doesn't have to be a complicated story. It truly doesn't. And I think that Pokemon game that you're talking about, it probably is not all that complicated, but you stick to the story. There is a story, and that is what drives the rest of the gameplay. It's like, it's a fine line, I'm sure, of adding the side quests and some depth and fleshing it out, and not to not detract from the actual narrative, so that you don't get lost in the weeds with so much to do. That happens to me a lot with Skyrim, or games like Skyrim. I think that to a degree it sort of happened with Red Dead Redemption as well. There was just too much to do on the side, but it was a fine line. And I think that Red Dead still did a really good job of it, even if maybe they just did too good of a job. But I think a narrative-driven focus is I think it's vital to almost every game. I think having a story in Street Fighter makes Street Fighter better, even if it's just a simple story. You want to know, and then you fight with everybody, and you get away from the stuff that really doesn't matter, which is fleeting and is like a skin. That's nice and it's great to collect, but what brings you back to the game? Why would I continue to play it? What is it about the game that makes it that would make you want to return to it?
Unless it's Ryu's new thick boy skin, and then we always want that.
There we go. Exactly.
Did you see how wide they've made him? He's like,
no, I haven't.
He's like a brick house. Like, he's so thick. I put it up
Fantastic.
On Instagram because it's like, it was in our story yesterday, because it's absolutely fierce how big he is in Street Fighter 6. Just reminded me of that. But yeah, I think the story-driven narrative is really important. In fact, before Cyberpunk 2077, which I think is very much that, the last game that I think I finished was Outer Worlds. Once again, very much that. So right. I think that's a huge one. For me, I would say in that vein, what I'm enjoying so much about this game right now, and what sort of triggered our thinking about this topic, was that they make backtracking and going back to areas that you've been before exciting, because at least in Nexamon Extinction, as you progress through the story, you get different powers granted to you by the children of this super huge, essentially, Pokemon. Yeah. And, it's kids, they give you special powers to control air and fire and water. Yeah. So because you can start to control these elements, you can start to get to areas of the map that were blocked out before. And I think I mean, I spent the longest time in the side quest trying to get up to this place, and it was blocked by an ice thing. And I was like, why is this blocked by an ice thing? And then I earned the power of fire. And then I saw these hidden things on the map that I couldn't see before that are me being able to get to these special areas. And now that I have more powers, like if I just can't get to an area, then I'm assuming I haven't progressed the story like enough. But it is making it more exciting. And I'm sort of making mental notes of, oh, let me go back to this area and see what's going on here later on, because I've come here very early and there are some bits I can't get to. So let me remember.
Right.
And I think old games, like how this one is structured, it is based off original Pokemon, and it is making backtracking exciting and using the environment to further the story. So, now I can get to this area because I had powers that I didn't have before. And I think that is quite different from just getting a key that opens a door. While that is a thing,
Right.
it's not
Resident
as
Evil does that.
involved, it's not as important, and I think I remember you talking about this, maybe it was a sort of a story driven text adventure maybe, but there's something involved in a goat in the environment and you had to use the goat to do something. Like they don't do
Right.
that in
Broken
games
Sword.
anymore.
Right. And Broken Sword does something that that point and click adventures were great at this. And this is one of the reasons why I loved them. And another reason why some people are infuriated with them is that they don't hold your hand. So everything is built into the experience. And right from the beginning, the first few mechanics that you learn are the same mechanics you're going to have the entire game. It's like all I do from there is build on those mechanics.
Right.
And from that, and they don't hold your hand. It's like you just start and you kind of figure it out, because none of us pulled out the booklet and read it to learn how to play the game. You just play. You would learn, if I wanted to go back and read lore, sometimes it might be in that, and I might do that. That might be the reason I'd open it, but I would never read it so that I could learn how to play. Nowadays, I'm having to go back and look at the the controller, the breakdown of the controller, and try to, and how it's configured, because I'll forget exactly what to push, and I start throwing shit I don't need to. I'm accidentally throwing grenades or shooting a gun when I'm supposed to be quiet, or all this stuff, because they're so complicated,
Yeah.
And again, granted, I know, there'll be dead gaming comments or whatever, because I've played games for a really long time. I'm just telling you, it doesn't have to be that complicated.
Yeah.
And simplified mechanics, starting from the beginning, and just building off of that. Don't get crazy with it. I think that allows, again, like I said with Guardians of the Galaxy, I can just jump right back in and play. It's got a good story. It's got relatively simple mechanics that are very intuitive. I can pick it up and play it, after being away for a while, and it's great. It's easy to do.
So I know what you're saying about simple mechanics, but I will say that one thing that I feel that older games did well, maybe not super old games, but like games from like the 2000s, was they made collectibles worth having a look at later. Like they put some thought into them. I think an example of a game that did this wrong, that is seared into my memory, is Arkham Asylum, because you would just collect these senseless trophies, absolutely all look the same. It was dumb as heck, and like I just remember hating it.
About the Riddler.
Yeah, and being mad about it, and like it just annoyed me. Whereas in this game, and in many other games before, I think there was sometimes like story and quest item collectibles and things in Skyrim that were cool to look at, like actually to look at on the screen. There are collectibles in Pokemon, in this Nexamon Pokemon knockoff, that are like amulets and things like that, and they do different stuff. So like it's worth looking to see what you've gotten, and you can get like all little miniature figures of all the little Pokemons, and they can follow you around in the game. So not only are there 300 Nexamons to collect, but there are also little miniatures that you can have to follow you around in the little 16-bit environment. Yeah, but like that is a collection worth having. Like something that is just 50 of an identical thing, who cares? Like that isn't actually interesting. It's not amusing. It's nothing that you would show anyone or take a screenshot of. Like, who cares? So I think, if new games are going to learn things from old games, like make collectibles actually worth showing off, because otherwise I
Uh,
don't want them.
Uncharted does this well, I think. Uncharted has unique collectibles. So you don't necessarily use them. They do add to the story because there's always some uh story element tied to those collectibles. I'm it could be Cortez or a number of other um adventurers over the course of history that have dropped things here and there, and you're searching after this treasure and you'll end up finding these little collectibles that are related to that. And I always thought that that was really cool, even if I didn't really want to collect them all. It was something fun. I think that Gears of War did that relatively well because there wasn't 1,000 of them. There was like 16 or 20 of the cog,
Yeah.
and so when I would go to look for their dog tags, I was looking for them all the time, and it made me want to go search the area because I knew I wasn't just trying to find 500 of them or 200 of them or even 100 of them. It was 15 or 20 of them. They might be over there, and if I go look around that corner where nothing else is, we've talked about that as a mechanic that we just do, and we're conditioned.
We're like Pavlov's dogs.
We are. So if there's a room over there and it's a dead end, I'm definitely going in there just to
Yeah.
see what's in there. Even though I know for a fact I can't get out and there's, it's not a part of the story. I'm still going to search it. But yeah, absolutely. I think that's good. I think a big one, and this is probably very nebulous and maybe obvious, but ship a complete game. Like
that's my final thought. Yeah. Send
Okay.
us a whole game day one. Yeah.
Just send a complete game. So, in the past when it wasn't even an option, and I was watching a video on some of these game mechanics that are gone that could be, should return. I was looking at Perfect Dark, GoldenEye, just a number of games from the 64, PS1, PS2 era.
Yeah.
And any of these games where the internet connection or connectivity wasn't an option, they're complete experiences. And so once I fire it up, I don't have to be tied to anything. Elden Ring is doing this in a way, and although I don't like the fact that it's always online for the most part, or at least the majority of times I've played it is a complete experience. When I boot it up and I start to play, I don't have to have anybody's help. I don't have to, it's just a complete experience. There wasn't necessarily a patch needed. There are no microtransactions. It's a game I purchased and I can play it, and I don't have to have anything else added to it. It was completely formed when we received it. I know that's an issue for some of these larger games to get out, but as we've said on this show a number of times, it's just better to wait to ship it until it's done. But that's probably my biggest one. It's just ship a complete game.
I think ship a complete game. Maybe don't have the huge day one patches, because people are excited about playing the game, and they get less excited when the very limited time they have is spent downloading a patch on the very first day. Even if the disc was complete, why was it so broken you needed a patch right away? That's a concern. But I think even more so, all these extra add-ons and currencies and season passes and whatever, it's getting out of hand, I think. And
absolutely,
the games that I enjoy now are complete experiences, and they don't have any of that stuff. In fact, if I just think back to all the games I've played recently, aside from that one time I downloaded a mobile game this year, but we shall not speak of it again. They're all complete experiences. Next One Extinction, when you download it, you get everything. Cyberpunk 2077, I mean, yeah, you could buy extra stuff, but it was still complete anyway, as far as I'm concerned. Outer Worlds, it's complete. The Last Stop, it's complete. They're all complete experiences. I don't want to pay you money just to pay you endless money. It's really annoying. And I just feel like it's quite disingenuous, because you never really know when the fun starts if it's an endless payment train. So
and I've had people ask this about Warcraft, because it's always a knock on MMOs. is the as long as there's no pay to win mechanic, that you usually can get away with that stuff. And I've always been in support of a good massive multiplayer online game because of that live service. But those are really the only games I've seen that have that model where it seems to have any merit, because the connectivity in the worlds have to be held on a server. You've got all of these other player characters on the screen many times at the same time, and so there has to be a way to maintain that. And those are living, breathing worlds that have been around for now more than a decade, almost 2 decades.
I think with MMOs, you know what you're getting into. I think my criticism is like,
Right.
you download a free to play game like Call of Duty Warzone. You think you're going to have a great time. You can only access like 5 different character models when you start. In order to get other character models, the grind is endless. If you want to be a woman, there are almost no options unless you buy something. Do you know, like it's kind of dumb. Like it's not fun actually. So
well, if anyone critically thought about it, I think that they would say not only is that dumb, but probably should be, you definitely shouldn't support it with your money or your time. You shouldn't download it. It's not only not a complete game, it's a racket. It's borderline illegal. It's like it's definitely, if not illegal, very unethical. It's very unethical.
Tell them.
I'm just saying it. And the proof is in the pudding. Like if you just look at some of these games, and I will use Elden Ring again as an example. They don't hold your hand. There is an actually very deep story in that, but I couldn't tell you what it is. It's just for people who really want to dive into it. You just kind of are thrown into this world. And and enough people have found that to be not only engaging, they want to return to it. I mean, 12 million copies for a game just doesn't happen. That just doesn't happen anymore. But I don't think it's because it can't. I think it's because these developers, they forget what really is most important and what gamers really want, because the people driving innovation in games are worried about the dollars and not about the gamers, or not about the product that they're sending out. And so somewhere in there, they're losing sight of what's important.
It's funny that you mentioned like just jumping into it and there's probably a story, but you don't know what it is. I think that's my final thing that games could learn from older games, is that there was a time when you were kind of incentivized to learn the lore, like where knowing the lore and stuff made things easier or gave you some sort of advantage. Or in the case of Skyrim, just occasionally when you open books, you get free things like that. You got ability points and stuff. I think I always feel bad when I aggressively tab through the dialogue, and I do, with the exception of perhaps RPGs where I have an option to express my opinions, like Mass Effect and things like that. In fact, Mass Effect and very similar games like Dragon Age are probably the only games I don't tab through the dialogue on. I want to care, but I also have limited time, and there's never anything important or critical in there. The reason why I didn't do it in Mass Effect, because oftentimes you would miss the whole context and then you'd be forced to make a decision based on who knows what. But I feel
I'd be the same way.
Games usually don't do that. And once you learn that there's no consequence for just tabbing ahead. Although Nexonomicon Extinction did get me the other day, because they were talking about like blueprints for something, and they were like, oh, if you got the blueprints, like what would you do? And I was just tabbing like blah 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 blah, and then it was like destroy them. They're like, that's boring. And I was like, but I wouldn't destroy them, I was just tabbing through.
And I think that there's something to be said for those games in the past, and those, there was a clear set of rules that you learned throughout gameplay. So, I would say the Final Fantasies, I cannot tell you the story for any of the Final Fantasies. Absolutely not for Kingdom Hearts. None of those. I can't tell you. I can tell you that I thoroughly enjoyed Final Fantasy 1, 4, 6, 9, 8, 7. I can tell you I enjoyed all of those Final Fantasies, and I do not know the story. I know story beats. The point of that, though, is through over the course of gameplay, I learned that there are a clear set of rules as to how these games work. I understood the emotion was more in the action and the interaction between. So much was said with 8 and 16-bit pixels without a lot of dialogue sometimes. They just did a really good job of conveying even emotion when it's very difficult to even see their eyes and their mouth, but they did it. And so like, for instance, you just knew that if you were fighting something that was undead, and if there was anything about it that was undead, to use a phoenix down would kill it automatically, because that brought life. And so if you use life on an undead enemy, it killed it automatically. If it's a water-based enemy, you use fire. I mean, just basic elemental stuff that you learned over the course of playing and held true in all of those games. And so you kind of knew already. They built that. It was kind of built into the education in the game. And now, you kind of have to, and that may be just a part of games evolving, but I thought that was also something that was really nice about old games that probably could be used nowadays as well.
Yeah.
Well, anything else? Any final thoughts on games and some of the mechanics and game tactics that retro gaming could teach current gen?
I mean, I guess my last final thought is, like, I think people love Elden Ring and games like that for the character customization as well. And I feel like we've gotten less of that recently. It's almost like as graphics have gotten better, the ability to render custom models has gotten worse or not kept up with it. And like, I really value that in a game. I love when I can make my character look like how I want it to look like, because then it makes the story more personalized to me. And I don't think that it's that hard to adapt a story for whatever. Like, why does what I look like matter so much to the story? Like, I think things like Horizon Forbidden West and all sorts would be more popular in general if people could look like whatever they wanted to look like. I don't think the fact that she's sort of a tomboyish girl is that inherent to the story. But if it's my character and my character looks like that, then it's relevant to my story. And so I think more character customization is important, not less. That I would say that's my sort of final piece of advice, although we've given many ideas.
I do, and I agree. I think that that's a lot of good advice. I don't disagree with you. I think it can be a draw. It can be definitely one of those things that makes a game more enjoyable for me to kind of get in the shoes of the character. If I can make them look like me, I also definitely see the merit in, I've got a character and I got to play this character because that's the character that the developer wanted me to play. And I see that as well. But again, I've also been able to play as male characters pretty much my entire life whenever I wanted to. And so I've never really thought of it any other way. And so every now and then when you've got to play as a girl in Life is Strange or Forbidden West or something else, it never bothered me because it never bothered me, but also it probably plays a factor that I've always been able to play as a man if I wanted to in most games. So it's an interesting take and one I don't know that I thought of. I know. Well, great. Well, that wraps up this episode of Retro Rebel Gamecast. I want to thank Amanda for this week's discussion. All the notes from this episode will be posted on our site, templeofgeek.com. If you'd like to add to the discussion or reach out with questions, sound off in the comments or email us at retrorebel@templeofgeek.com. If you like what you hear, head over to wherever you download your podcast and subscribe so you'll be sure to get each episode as it's released, and rate us because that really helps our show. Until the next time.
See you later.